Hey everyone, welcome to the first episode of season two for the WuhooPoints podcast, where we talk about different credit card strategies or just anything about points and things like that. I have Moawia. He and I met on Instagram Threads, funny place to be, where we just talk about credit cards, points, all that stuff. And we have a fun discussion today to talk about cent per point, or the value of your points. But first, before we begin, tell me about yourself. What got you into the travel and credit card space? And what has been your favorite redemption so far?
Sure. Thank you, Matt, for having me. I think I fell into this space, honestly, call it accidentally. I work for a great, awesome company where travel is involved. And I'm lucky enough that the company I work with or for is allowing me to keep my points and miles. So I get reimbursed for traveling. And so that's where I kind of fell into it and started building a strategy to allow me to essentially take advantage of that. I live in Phoenix, like my profile, indicate. I've lived in Phoenix now for actually going more than 30 years. Redemption wise, I think there is several, I would say. I think the one that is memorable for me, not just because, it was very efficient in using, miles, but because I took my youngest son last year. He's 13, and we went to London for 4 days. That was a memorable trip. It was our first just son and father and son trip alone, and we left my wife and two other kids, here in Phoenix. So
Yeah.
I think he learned a lot, and I learned a lot as well, and we enjoyed the trip.
Awesome. How many, off the top of your head, how many points did you use versus how much did it cost in cash?
So this was a redemption. One, there was a reason for it as well, in addition to taking my son. I am a American Airlines fan, and I wouldn't call it a diehard loyalist, but I am loyalist, given that Phoenix is a hub. And so we know that American Airlines is getting rid of its first class, cabin, and expanding maybe the business class cabin and other places as well in the aircraft. And so we going into London, we flew Phoenix, Dallas, London, and then Dallas, London was on the first class. That was about 87,000 American Airlines miles. And then coming back was around 60 on business class.
Yeah.
And so if you look at it generally, this would have been in the range, Phoenix to London, in the range of like a $4,500 dollar business class, let alone first class, but business class ticket per person. Now this may be a segue for us to talk about the value, right?
Yes.
I've got actually a post that's coming out here around, I think, cent per point, or the valuation of points in that manner might be overrated. I tend to think about it in terms of value and return, not cent per point. And the value to me, one, I think a big piece for me in value is the memories you create. So there is no, I don't have any, shame for anyone saying I spent 200,000 miles to go X, and I took my family with me, and we intentionally created these memories. And so I don't have any, any problem with that, because I think I can't put a dollar value per se on the memories you intentionally create with your loved ones. But at the same time, what I want to highlight here, and that's maybe part of the discussion you and I had, is around, these points don't come for nothing, for free, right? You're either spending and you're getting rewarded, essentially, whether some of us like to call it a rebate, some of us like to call it, hey, you're getting a discount, because essentially, I am in the camp that calls it a discount. So if I'm paying $10 for something and I'm getting 5% back, that's a discount. That's why my view has always been, if you're not participating, you're leaving money behind.
Yeah.
And so with that in mind, then I put a dollar value, whatever that dollar value is, and we all may differ on what that dollar value is for our points. Um, for simplicity's sake, I just like to use 1 cent per point, um, because people today can actually withdraw their points and pay themselves in cash.
Yeah.
And that would be money realized in somebody's bank account. And that's why sometimes I feel like we do, whether it's the public, ourselves, a disservice when we say, I flew business class for $5.60.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you spent also 70,000
Yeah.
points that you could have actually banked that at 1 cent per point to be 700, $700.
Yeah.
And so I think we just ought to be a little bit careful about, kind of propagating or continuing on the messaging that you can fly for free. It's never free. Um, because even if you think about it, even if you think about the sign up bonuses, some people think that it is, well, the sign up bonus is free. Well, I just posted today and you saw it. There is a 250,000 sign up bonus for American Express Business Platinum card.
Yeah.
Well, you have to spend $20,000 on that card,
Yeah.
right, to get the 250.
Mm-hmm.
And when you spend those $20,000 on that card to get the 250, there is an opportunity lost. You could have spent that $20,000 on other cards
Mm-hmm.
that could net you even
Three.
potentially more.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. And so it's never lost on me that there is either a real value for the points that you can actually cash out and put it in the bank, or there is an opportunity cost that's lost, um, based on the decisions you make on how you collect and accumulate points.
One thing I want to go back to, you mentioned, when you buy things with a credit card, you're viewing, 5% back, whatever it is, as a discount. But if people are double discounting, right? They take the discount mentally from buying something, also when redeeming. But you can't do that, right? You can't say I got a discount with my points by buying something, and I use the points for something that's free. But mentally, that's what happens, I think, to a lot of people as well.
Right. Right. And I ran into, so to add to what we just to add into what you just said,
Mm.
what sometimes I run into, even the comparison, right? So value could show itself in comparing, well, I can, redeem my points or miles on Delta Airlines for an economy ticket for, let's call it 60,000, sky miles or sky pesos in this case. Or I can go to Air France and buy the same ticket
Mm-hmm.
for 20,000, flying blue miles.
Yep.
And so there is value there for sure. Otherwise, go ahead and spend the points in, with Delta. If there's no value and you think it's all free and you're only paying the tax, right? So go spend it with Delta, not with Air France. And I think that's the other piece in the redemption that people, like you said, sometimes miss, and not highlight or put value to.
Yeah. So and just to go back, I think a little bit, typically in our industry, people rely on cent per point because it's just a somewhat objective number, right? We compare most of the time, 10,000 points is $100. That's like a baseline, right? But so from this discussion, I'm pretty sure I know the answer, but just to ask this, like, can CPP tell you value, or is it, way too subjective?
I think it's way too subjective for me personally, and others may have different calculations. And I shared my calculation, and so what I would like to think about is it's in a way reflective of the cent per point, but it has a different lens or a different angle to it.
Yeah.
It's really looking at the return on the investment, that you make. And so I take the total value, cash out at the time of purchase.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I purchased a ticket from Phoenix to Paris, and I paid, let's call it 45,000 points or miles.
Mm-hmm.
That ticket at that time of purchase was around, round trip, and this is an area also sometimes in this space people argue about. I
Yeah.
like to look at the round trip price, divide by two to get a one way, to get a one way price, and then I compare the one way price from the return ticket, or the round, the round ticket to it. But I do convert the points or miles to dollars. So in that case, my 40 or 45,000 sky blue, flying blue,
Yeah.
points are equal to 450, dollars. I compare that as an investment compared to the 400, the 4,000 or whatever the
Yeah.
number is. And I just do the math. Is that, okay, I've invested this much and I got this much out of it.
Hmm.
And it just kind of gives me a return on investment, instead of the cent per point. You can argue the cent per point gives you that also visibility, but it narrows it down. And what I think I found, and this is why I chose this return on investment method,
Hmm.
people start to fight
Yeah.
over, well, this is not a good redemption.
Yeah.
Well, who's to say this is not a good redemption? um and so I just, to avoid that type of conversation, I think if we make it around the return on investment, because I could truly take that money, that $450,
Hmm.
invested somewhere and get a return on it.
Yeah.
And that's how I kind of rationalize that, in my mind, is that um this might be a better way to look at it versus the cent per point. It's
Yeah.
still a return on points per cent, each cent is a return, but at the same time I'm looking at it as an investment perspective, because I could have that money put somewhere to
Yeah.
invest, whether in a Roth IRA, or
Even.
even you could think of renovating your bathroom as an investment back into your, money being put back into the equity of the home.
Yeah,
So
I kind of like this because you're right. People get a little bit too hooked up on 1.15, 1.35, and that I think sometimes scares people. They realize, oh, I'm only getting 1.1 cent per point. I shouldn't book this trip. I shouldn't go. And for me, especially, I think also the other end is if you just have a lot of points, if you're constantly earning points, in a way, for me, it doesn't matter. I went to Grand Hyatt Athens. I think it was 9,000 points per night, but the cost of the hotel was only $100. So it was a very bad redemption. But 9,000 points is a drop in the bucket, and I just wanted to be free. I like traveling for free, I guess, investing that 99,000 points. But I find a lot of my clients sometimes they're too fixated. They're like, I have to get at least two, at least three for flights or something like that.
yeah, and I think what makes it hard, then you're just waiting in anticipation for instead of really enjoying and redeeming your points to enjoy and intentionally create memories,
Yeah.
you're then waiting for that unicorn of a redemption to say, okay, now I feel good about my my redemption.
Yeah.
And yeah, and that's, I think, is maybe it may make people feel good about spending their points, like you posted recently here.
Mhm.
The more you keep them, the more they devalue. The more you keep them, the more less valuable they become, just as a currency.
I wonder what the deflation, I guess devaluation math is, right? Because if I have $1,000 worth of points and I keep them for 5 years versus just withdrawing it and putting it into what we're talking about, a Roth IRA or another investment, like just someone smarter than me can do the math, and just those points have decreased way more when you have the opportunity cost that we were talking about earlier.
Yeah, I think you know that's a good way of also articulating it, because there's a lot of people in this space
Mm-hmm.
that fear the complexity.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things we have to be aware of is that how can we demystify and bring simplicity into this space. There is no magic, there is no voodoo, there is no, it's all just one looking at, their lifestyle and travel habits, or, you know, and putting a strategy together that kind of meets that,
Yeah.
um, right? Without feeling pressure to well, so and so got this card, I have to get this card, or so and
Mhm.
so went to, the Maldives, I have to go to the Maldives. And what I tell my family and friends always is that the minute you start to compare, now you've got on board of the Envy Express. And
Yes.
in this space, this is not a fun place, not a fun place to be.
Yeah, like comparing 13x value to 1520x value, like what does that even mean? Business class, first class flights are so inflated. For example, I booked a Cathay Pacific first class flight in points, and it's $21,000 one way. I would never pay that much money. Like, no way. Am I getting $21,000 worth of value? Like, technically, yes, but hard to really say. So I guess this is another topic people debate about is if I'm flying again, let's just say Hong Kong to JFK, do I compare my points and cash value as in the actual first class flight I got, or the economy flight I probably would have booked to make that trip, or other things to base it off of? Like, what are your thoughts on those arguments?
Yeah, I would like to compare apples to apples. And so that's why I lean towards comparing. If you bought a business class ticket, let's compare it to a business class cash ticket.
Mm-hmm.
But let's compare it not to the one-way cash price, because the one-way cash price is inflated,
Yep.
right? And and in this day and age, unless you're relocating completely, you have to go and come back. But I wholeheartedly agree with the concept that um, we should we should be very careful about publishing I saved. So the concept is I saved $10,000.
Yeah.
And we see this quite a bit. You have not saved $10,000, because like what you just said is that, will you really spend $10,000 on a ticket? And the answer is no,
No way.
right? And so I think these are all some things that don't really help
Mm-hmm.
in this space. It just adds more confusion, it adds more complexity, and people feel like, is this even real? Are you just kidding me? And I see comments like cap, you know, people think that people are lying just because they say, I flew for free. It's not free.
Yeah.
Sorry. The other message, Matt, that I think we might want to hone into
Mm-hmm.
is the goal to fly for free, or actually to minimize out-of-pocket cost.
Yeah.
Because there is no such thing as free. You're going to spend money at the airport. You're going to do a whole bunch of other things, right?
Yeah.
During your journey to your destination. So the goal ought to be, I'm actually minimizing my out-of-pocket cost.
Yeah.
Um, right? And I'm using points and miles to reduce my out-of-pocket cost. And while I'm actually doing that, I am getting value.
Enjoying life.
Um,
Yeah.
in value in the sense that instead of redeeming them for cash at 1 cent per mile or point, I'm getting actually more. And that more could be 2, 5, 6, 7. The multiplier is up to you.
No, I agree with that. And like, there's also this other distinction where, for example, I'm going to Korea for my brother's wedding. I have to go there. I'm going there anyways. Versus another trip, like I went to Brussels last year over New Year's. I didn't have to go to Brussels. I just wanted to fly, go somewhere, enjoy my time. And so points and miles do come into that equation where I never would have gone to Brussels in business class if I didn't have these points. Maybe I would have gone somewhere domestic or somewhere cheaper. Maybe I would have flown economy. So there's a lot of like still subjectivity around. For someone new to the credit card space, heard of these travel points, what are some simple ways they can start thinking about this? Going back to what you're talking about that investment and return. How would you put it simply to these people?
So this the simplest I would say, honestly, Matt, is one: if you're not participating, you're leaving money basically to the vendors, to the merchants, to the banks, and you name it, right? So there in this chain or supply chain, there is a whole bunch of people that make money, and if you're not actually getting those, I'm going to call them again discounts. If you're not getting those discounts, that means you're leaving. I can go. We both can go to the same restaurant. We can both can go order the same thing, I'm going to get 5% discount in the form of points, and you may be paying the full price.
Yeah, they're paying the processing fee of the billing
Right.
cards,
Right. And so and that's how I have put it simply to people. Now, I think each one of us has to determine, um, is it even worth for me pursuing? So the example is, if I only eat out, let's say, once a quarter,
Mm-hmm.
is it even worth for me pursuing getting five, you know, right, five x,
Yeah.
for dining? It might not, right? But if you run a business and you entertain people, and yeah, it may be actually a sizable chunk.
Yeah, 1 million, 5 million can be.
Right. Correct. And not to make it complicated, then I think as you look at your lifestyle and your spending habits, you can then make a decision and determine, is one card that gives me just 2x or 2% back, the way to go because of my spending habits and lifestyle? Awesome, that may work. That may be great work, for what you need.
Mhm.
But then, as your lifestyle and work and business becomes a lot more complex, and you look at the different spending categories, it might make sense for you to get a few cards. I'm not saying go ahead and get 20 cards. A few cards just addresses the categories that you actually most spend in.
Mhm.
And then that will get you into the space, that will get you to practice discipline. This will get you to, because that's the other thing with this, you have to be very disciplined. Yes. And one of the things that I posted about is that, um, chasing points and miles could make, through credit card spend, could make you spend more if you're not careful.
Yep.
Because you could rationalize, well, I'm getting actually X, or today is 10x, I'm gonna spend, so you justify basically getting a $200 steak, like I put it, just because it's a 10x today, or it's a double point day, while it wasn't really on your agenda or
Spend
on
zero.
your plan to to spend anything today, right? And so I think discipline comes in with practice and learning, and start slow and then grow into it, and see what makes sense.
I really like that. I'll leave with 2 points and then give you the final word. I think one thing for me, points has allowed me to do in redemption is to do nice staycations. I'm in the DC area, more in the suburbs. So when I have things actually occurring in DC, Arlington, it's nice to book a hotel. I would never pay the $100, but with points, because I have so many, it eases my mind and helps that convenience. Even though, again, the cent per point value is bad, the return is definitely worth it for me. And then again, I think associated with that, at the end of the day, for me, free is free. As we're talking about, there's opportunity cost. You can put that points towards a really good business class trip. You could put those points for a lot of economy trips or high resorts or just a higher place, whatever, right? For me, at the end of the day, as long as you're using those points, you're getting some sort of value, hopefully, and it's free, as in you've redeemed, these points aren't spending cash, is kind of my point of view. Again, knowing all the discipline that you just talked about and the way to calculate it correctly. Anything else you want to share? How can people follow you and connect with you and learn from you?
Yeah, well, thank you. I think, I'm becoming more active now on Threads. My blog has died. I didn't have time for it, so blog is almost dormant at the moment. I'm rethinking what does content that's AI ready looks like, and I may revive. I'm educating myself on that, and so I may revive the blog once I kind of get a firm grasp on that. But I'm more active right now on Threads, and somewhat on Instagram. And so my handle is World Travel with Miles. Yeah, on both. And what I would leave your audience with is that this is not a game. This is not a hack. There is no and these are some of the trigger words for me.
Mhm.
It's not a hobby. It's not a game, and it's not a hack either. Um, I personally take it very seriously because it's money.
You have to.
Yes, while it may not make me rich, and I don't think that's the intent of it. Um, but at the same time, I'm not gonna be treating it just as a hobby. I'm not gonna treat it as a game, nor I'm gonna treat it as a hack. I'm gonna seriously treat it as a strategy, and my message is think about it as a strategy, even if you have one card.
No, I thank you for those final words. I think it's very important to consider this seriously. That's what this podcast is for. Thank you so much for your time,
Yeah.
and hope you have a good weekend.
All right, you do the same, and thank you for having me.